You're listening to the Australian Hunting and Beyond podcast with Matt, where we talk about hunting, shooting, fishing, camping, and everything else that the great outdoors has to offer. Let's get into it. All right, I'm already hungry and we haven't even started the podcast. I've got Kevin from Smokin Gauchos.
That's it.
Mate, look, I did struggle saying that before we got on air, so I'm glad you clarified that for me. But, mate, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thanks. Yeah, I'm great, mate. Great. No, you did a good job at pronouncing it. I often get asked how to pronounce it. It wouldn't be the first. It is a Latin American term that means cowboy. So, in simple terms, a gaucho is effectively an Argentinian / Brazilian, depending on where you're from, cowboy that roamed the pampas and herded cattle. So that's where the term gaucho comes from.
Love it. So I've been a big fan of your stuff for a while now, and I am absolutely intrigued because I love going to Brazilian barbecue, and it's just such a great tasting, the flavors. Like my chicken hearts are my absolute favorite when I go there.
So good.
Unbelievable. You do a fire table, and I want to dive straight into it because that looks so bloody good, mate. Tell us about, let's get into that, and then I want your background. There's just so much to talk about.
Oh, there is. I don't know where to start. So, and funnily enough, the fire table was an evolution, a productive evolution, because where I started was with a parrilla or a parrilla, depending on where in Latin America you're from, but the pronunciation is effective, or as Australians love to call it, a parrilla. And that's where it started. But the fire table was an evolution as far as, a couple of things, but realising how we like to use, especially in Australia, how we like to use a device for fire cooking, and wanting to go a little bit further than just the traditional fire pit or, an open fire or a small, hibachi grill. Being able to give you something, the way I coin it when people ask about it, it's like the Meccano set for fire cooks, which is what I love. It's a cross between your grill, your hanging setup, your smoker. There's basically you can do everything on it. It's got your firebox, or what is known in Latin America as a brasero. The brasero is the firebox where you build your fire in, and the intention is that hardwood burns down, coals fall through the bottom of the brasero. There's like a grate on the bottom, and the coals come through, and then you shovel those coals and you put them underneath your grill, or depending on where you're cooking, if you want intense flame over here on the V grill for your searing, or you want a nice low and slow heat for your churrasco, your skewers, or you need the residual heat for everything that's hanging up on the bridge. That's the fire table, and it's just a really fun and universal way, and it's of cooking, and it's just been incredibly well received, and all the guys, all our customers have just absolutely loved using a fire table, all their parrilla for cooking. It's it's just a really universal tool to do as much or as little as you want. If you want to cook just a piece of steak, you can do that, keeping it over to one side. If you want to go the whole shebang and cater for 80 people, you can do that on it as well. So it's fun piece of kit.
I definitely am a big fan of it because it's sort of that cross between, I love my pellet smoker. And I'd love to do an offset smoker, but the problem with that is just the time that it takes. Yeah. And I love the idea of just how simplistic the fire table is, in the sense that you've got your firebox, the hot coals are dropping out the bottom, and you can then shift them left or right to, you had your V grill.
The V grill, yeah.
Yeah, what do you call this? Is it circle grill, like just the circle bars?
Round bar grill.
Round bar,
yeah.
And it's just awesome, because I sort of sat there and just went, I loved what you did. I was watching a couple of different ones that you do. And if you haven't, guys, jump over, check out Instagram or YouTube, Smokin Gauchos. And it's really good stuff. And funnily enough, actually, I saw on there Dylan Smith, who you did a goat where you just basically split down the middle, and then what was that over? That was a unique contraption as well. Yeah. I'm sitting here going, "What the hell are these? These are brilliant."
So this is the like so. Probably now a good segue into the background, and I'll talk about Dylan because I love the bloke to bits, and the background of the brand was inspired through Latin American culture. So that's where Smokin Gauchos came from. Now, I'm not Latin American. My background's Maltese, funnily enough. Born and raised in Australia, first generation. My parents were immigrants, came over here from Malta. And so, I mean, cooking's always been a part of my life, but cooking with fire, it was actually my best mate's dad, whose name was also Kevin, that taught me how to cook with wood fire. So Sunday barbecues, here's the good old backyard Australian Aussie barbecue, the hot plate, you get your sticks, you get your kindling after you mow the lawn, you chuck them in there and you start your fire. And I didn't actually realise how significant that was for me growing up. I didn't realise that they would form core memories that would then end up influencing my whole trajectory for cooking and my interest in barbecue and grilling and wood fire. And it's funny what you said before about, the offset smoker. So I've done every form and have owned almost every contraption of cooking implement. And that's where the brand started, or where I got to in my grilling journey, having done coals and wood fire oven, and I've got a drum smoker. So when competition drums were a big thing, I mean they still are quite popular. But I was doing the American barbecue, and I got to the point where I was sort of getting a bit over the sort of, I was doing the hot and fast method as opposed to low and slow. I did low and slow on the Webbers, but I got to the point where it's just that really rich flavour was getting a bit too much, and I wanted something more versatile. I wanted to cook with fire in different ways. And I also don't just love cooking one cuisine. I love cooking lots of different cuisines. So I thought, what's the best way? What's the most useful way, other than setting up a full, brick hearth and doing something really permanent, which you can obviously see behind me. I've got the shack over there. The parrilla, when I was doing my research and having, I've worked for Argentinians and had a lot of Latin American friends, and I knew about the style, but never really dove into what asado was. And that's effectively, asado is that. It's barbecue, it's grilling. And what I learned was the parrilla, that grill, the style of grill with a variable height mechanism is what the parrilla is specifically known for. But the churrasco style, which is the Brazilian style barbecue, it was in my view, was probably the most versatile piece of equipment. It's got a fire, it's got coals, it's got a variable height rack, it's got a warming rack, it's somewhere I can hang, and everyone has their own version of a parrilla. There's lots of different, models out there, from something as simple as literally a piece of wire mesh grill, a shopping trolley, or whatever you can find. In Argentina, that's what they do. They'll build it out of anything. And then you've got the more sort of formidable options like what we manufacture. And that's what I did. I said to my wife, I said, look, I'd really love to get a wood fire grill. But there was nothing on the market. This is, going back to nearly 2018, 2019. I said there was really nothing out there that I liked, and that for the money that I was willing to spend, that suited my need and was versatile enough. And so she said, oh, okay, well, what do you want to spend on one of these things? And I just said, oh, well, there's nothing really I like. I'm thinking I might go build one. And spent the next about 2 years designing, prototyping, building, testing, and eventually got to the La Parrilla that you see behind you. But and that, literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of customers around Australia that own one now, which has been pretty special. But it was all influenced from the gaucho style of cooking known as asado. And what you saw with Dylan, and certainly big shout out to Dylan. He's become an excellent mentor of mine. He's literally coached me back into hunting after I'd been out of hunting for 20 years. So there's a segue that we can talk about there. But I realised that connection with my connection with food needed to go beyond the butcher store. And having been an ex-hunter and having not done it, raising a young family and all that sort of stuff, it felt like the right time to get back into it. And Dylan's been he's been instrumental in every step of the way, and I've had a few mentors that I'll shout out to a bit later. But Dylan's been pivotal and just been so objective in giving me all the insight and the guidance and advice in hunting today. And so when we were up there on our last trip, and you would have seen from the content on Instagram. We literally went and harvested a goat one day. We harvested a few goats and processed them and did the whole thing. But then I said to him, what I'd love to do for his family and friends is an asado-style cook-up. And what we did was we butterflied this goat. So it was a beautiful kid. It was in excellent condition, had just the right amount of fat on it. It was just a beautiful, beautiful specimen. And we literally, we hung it overnight. We let it set. I skinned it the next day right before the cook, showed him how to butterfly. So I opened it up, spread it out, and he was given what was known as an Asador cross or an Asado cross, and he was given it for his wedding, and had never used it, and he wasn't too sure how to use it, and so I said, well, mate, that is perfect. Like, let's put that to good use. So we butterflied the goat, wired it all up, and then effectively it's the process of you build your fire. And then you move the coals from that fire down underneath the Asado cross. The Asado cross is somewhere on, let's just say somewhere between a 30 and sort of 45 degree angle. And you control your heat with the coals with a view of effectively cooking that rib cage down and cooking that goat or that lamb or that deer or whatever it is you're cooking as evenly as possible. So there's a fair bit of fire management involved. But that's the open style. That's an open style cook or asado style cook where we use a combination of the whole beast and then the hang. So you might notice in the pictures there was some sausages and some veg and stuff hanging up behind. So that's just getting that residual fire, the residual smoke, the residual heat from the fire, and the smoke wafting through it, just enveloping the protein and the veg. And after about 7 or so hours, you've got yourself. So it is an all day thing. It's very much a very much a ritual. It is something where you do have to slow down, which is what I love about it. You take your time and you're just tending to it, over those 6 or so hours before, literally just fall off the bone, tender goat. Like we fed, I think it was about 15 or 16 of us there. And when you see the kids smashing it and the adults, we made rolls and chimichurri, made a homemade chimichurri, some smoked corn, some burnt carrots with some butter and honey glaze. Like it's just phenomenal. Just a phenomenal experience to do that at his property out there in Armidale and surrounded by family and friends after having been bush for, 3 days. And it was just incredible, just an incredible experience.
All right, I've stuffed up because I've got you on today, and literally in the last probably 16 hours, I've had a 46-calorie pho, as Aussies say it, and a banana. And then before we recorded today, I was doing a heap of work to my camper to get it a bit right, and then did a 10K run. And so I am absolutely starving right now, and just you describing that is just tipping me over the edge. The good thing is once we end, I'll be going and doing some reverse searing on a couple of really nice Scotch fillet steaks. So I'm excited for that. But let's put that away. So, mate, I do look, it looked so good. And what impressed me about how you did that was just such a simple, the cross system, just so simple in moving it up and down in the slots there. And the carrots looked delicious. Like the whole thing, the chimichurri looked amazing. And I was just sitting there going, this is sensational. Like this is not just great way to cook, but I love the fact that you're using animals that were harvested from the bush. And I think there needs to be more great cooking of our venison, of our goats, of things that you can harvest, because I feel there's a bit of a lack of that being, I guess, really pushed by different styles, I suppose. Everyone sort of sees the same old, but your stuff's a little bit different because it's that Argentinian or Brazilian flavor to it, which I really, really love what you're doing there. So props to you. How much does one of these cost, mate? Because like I haven't got that far. I do have a minister of finance in my wife who doesn't know we're talking at the moment, so I might get in trouble later. Lucky I've got a few weeks before this will come out. But what do they set people back? Because they look good.
Yeah, well, thankfully I haven't had too many death threats from wives around Australia. Actually, in fact, I tend to get a lot of our business actually comes from the partners of husbands that have been on the sideline frothing over our gear for usually a long time, and it's actually pretty humbling when a woman typically reaches out to me and says, "Oh, look, my husband's this big. I'd love to get him an apron and a knife, and he'd really love, he really wants to get into fire cooking, and this is where he's at in his journey, and that I can sort of help navigate, what's best for them, and as objectively as possible as well." I'm a big ethos of the brand was, and it goes into where I guess the question you asked. Big ethos of the brand was to only create the stuff that I would personally use as a fire cook. This is a passion project of mine that that I've built over 5 or so years. It's sort of gotten out of control now. It's at a really great point where it's certainly earned its stripes and its credibility. And I'm always trying to improve how we do things and what we do, and qualities. The quality is unfounded, and I think that's the biggest thing for us. It's like, or what I've always believed is, if I'm going to buy something, I try and buy it once. I try and buy well, and I want to buy something that's going to stand the test of time, that's built to a particular standard. I have ridiculously high standards of myself, so that ethos transfers into every product we make. We're very conscious about that because it's something we do get asked a lot. But to sort of put into perspective, a Paria like the one you see behind us, that's $42.50 on the trolley there. So, and again, that was the price point I was looking at when I went to buy one originally, and I was sort of looking at that $4,000 to $5,000 mark, and that was my goal, was to create a product that met all the things that I wanted, that had all the functions and features, whereas you could buy them back then, but they didn't quite do what ours did, and it wasn't to the spec that I would have expected for that price point. And so that was the goal, was to set out, and we work really hard to try to keep that cost as manageable as possible. Really hard when you're manufacturing in Australia, might I add, which is something that I was really passionate about and have always tried to. Anything we can make in Australia, we will, or we try and do as much as possible. And then, from a brand perspective, the leather goods and the knives are all handmade in Brazil and Argentina. So keeping on brand there, but also being really, I spend months, and I'm talking 6 to 12 months on average, to find the right suppliers. Taken years to build a really close supply network of artisans that can build the products. So the Paria is $42.50, and then the fire tables you're looking at just under sort of $3.5, depending on the model. An Argentine cross or an Asador cross sits at about sort of $700 or $800, depending on the specs. We tend to make them to order, depending on what most people are more likely to cook. So it is one of those, nice to haves. It's one of those instruments that, unless you got a bit of space and a fire pit, you probably wouldn't buy an Asado cross unless you're going bush a lot and you're doing, you're slaughtering, say, a whole goat or deer or whatever, and you can use that. It's not for the average household backyard. It's probably not the way to go. But obviously the fire tables and the grills, they've got quite a large grill surface area. So, you could put a suckling pig on that without any issue, for example, and still do that butterfly style. I do a lot of butterfly chooks. I do butterfly pig and small suckling pigs, and they fit quite well, and from a domestic standpoint. But that's kind of the range of what you're looking at from the Asador cross right up to the flagship Paria, and the fire tables anywhere in between. We've got a couple of really beautiful custom jobs we're doing at the moment with some fire. So it's I guess, a fire table on steroids. So imagine like a nice big hibachi style fire pit at the bottom. So a big, large brick, insulated fire pit with like a racking system on the back, and the grills can basically hang anywhere on the rails along the back wall, so there's no obstruction in the front. It's literally just these rods that you can put all your different grill combinations. And those ones that we're building, we built one for a really nice wood fire restaurant that I highly recommend, called Osborne House, down at the Southern Highlands in Southern Highlands in New South Wales. And head chef there, Alex Torres, he's incredibly talented chef, and we did a custom unit for them just before Christmas last year. And the stuff that I've seen him cook on that thing is just phenomenal. It gives you a lot of control. You can do whole beasts. You can add an Asador cross on the sides. There's a lot we can do. I guess that's one of the benefits of being a custom fabricator, as well as having a product range here in Australia.
I mean, that's pretty reasonable, and especially the Asado cross. I was just thinking that because I'm on an acre out here, so I've got a little bit of land to play with, so it's not something that I could not use, because I was sort of comparing it with like one of the really big stainless steel spits. So like they sort of do the same job other than it rotating, but you are like cooking similar ways. So I can see the benefits of doing that. Hey there, listeners. Are you looking for that awesome hunting t-shirt or hoodie to level up your wardrobe? Well, head over to the AHB store and check out the range that we have to offer. We have a variety of different collections for you. So whether it's supporting the show, hunting, fishing, camping, drone fishing, or something else outdoors, we probably have something there that is for you. Each piece is designed so that you can look great whilst representing your outdoor passion. Whether you're down the local, hanging with friends, training for the rut, or just chilling at home, there's a design to suit. Just search Australian Hunting and Beyond Linktree and head to the store. What are you waiting for? You're just one click away from representing that outdoor passion with style. So let's get into that new clothing.
Yeah, it's a very similar. Rotisserie has the benefit of, I guess, self-lubricating. So it's, it keeps the moisture within it. And it is very similar. What I also find, though, a lot of people tend to use coals in the rotisserie as opposed to wood fire, and that's, I think, one of the beautiful things about the Asador cross. The thing that I find when cooking over an open, when you butterfly, you tend to want to keep some sort of moisture, and you want to be adding moisture either in the form of, couple of bottles of beer, which caramelizes beautifully. I always love making, I don't know if you noticed in the videos, but a brine. So I'll do like effectively a baste, and that's just got, peppercorns and cloves and all the aromatics, all the herbs, the rosemary, garlic, lemon, red wine vinegar, salt, it's in a bit of all the aromatics in water, and it just sits there bubbling away. And then I make a big herb brush out of fresh rosemary on literally a stick, and use that to baste the beast as we're cooking. And it's just, you just keep adding that moisture in so it caramelizes as you go. But yeah, very, very similar style of cooking. Rotisserie, obviously, you can sit back a little bit more and watch it, which is always great if you wanted to, just want to have a few. I mean, you still have a few beers no matter what, but I just find there's something pretty. I think it's the theatrics. I think the ambience of what, of an open animal. Every time we've done it, it just the attention that it brings, and the atmosphere it creates doing that open style cook, and putting a couple of star pickets into the ground, having an Asador cross, hanging a few different cuts of meats with a couple of different fires going. It's pretty beautiful. It's a visually stunning process, and it serves as the entertainment and talking point as much as the food does.
Well, I know you said that it's self-lubricating as a rotisserie spit, but you're talking what you did with your fresh herb bundle, wrapping that to a stick and then using that to baste it with that brine. Man, unbelievable. And I loved that it was in cast iron. I'm a massive fan of cast iron pots and pans. It's pretty much the only way we cook if we're using a pan. And I was just sort of watching all the different things, picking up little tips and tricks. I have never even thought about tying it to a stick. And I sort of like, that's so simple. Why have I never thought about this? I've always gone a different, I've usually used like the herb brush, but never
Sure.
thought about going to that level. And that would be perfect on whether it be a rotisserie or the Armada Cross. That's awesome. Now, it was also part of a hill to grill, was it called that? And a link up with Hunter's Element, which I love that a hunting brand's getting involved too.
Yeah, really. And again, one of those things that it's all a little bit surreal the last couple of years, and I'm really grateful for it. One of my mentors is a guy called John Raleigh, who I'm sure you know well, and incredibly polished chef in his own right, patissier, sorry, I should say, and hunter, forager, gatherer, and I've had the fortune of being a good friend of his and learning a lot from him, and they discovered me, and through some of the collaborations that John and I have done, and they reached out. Hunter's Element reached out and said, "Hey, we'd love more recipes." And to me, it was the perfect fit as far as John was doing some episodes for them, and I said, well, I can do the same, because for me, what you were talking about before was spot on. Was I really feel we need to create more awareness around alternative game, around game meats, or alternative protein, I should say. There's just everything going for it. We have it in abundance. They're feral animals. They're, the damage they cause to our landscapes, to our environment, to our farms, our properties. And if we could just harvest more and start supplementing our diet, our beef, our pork, our chicken, with some venison, with some goat, with some rabbit, it would just be such a game changer. And that was the goal I set out for last year. And I said to Hunter's Element, my goal is to substitute about 50% of my protein with game meat for me and my family. And it's just been such a phenomenal journey. Hunter's Element has supported that the whole way. So I've been really grateful to have the support of the brand and their gear, and be able to go out there in the wild, harvest my own protein, and then process it, and know the journey from beginning to end of how it's ended up on my plate. And also, what I also love and that's been incredible is it's the stuff that I'm doing anyway that I've been able to turn into content. And what I'm hoping is that if I can inspire or encourage others to go and do the same, even if the hunting piece is not necessarily for them, even if they can make it as like a conscious consumption, okay, go to your butcher and ask for a rabbit and know how to cook it. It's not hard to get goat. Goat's, one of the most consumed meats in the world. It's not a lot of good butchers now are selling goat and kangaroo, phenomenal things you can do with kangaroo. Venison, really easy to get. It's getting much easier to get now. And so I thought, whether you're hunting it or not, if I can show people what to do with it, and then also take it one step further and do it in a way where they're cooking it over fire or in a wood fire oven, that's just, it's just another level. Like I think it's that. To me, it's all about getting back to those primal roots. I work 1 million hours a week and work at 1 million miles an hour. And what I find is, by the time I get to the weekend, or I get that opportunity to cook, it slows everything down, and it allows me to just it feels like time is stopping. And that's just one of the things. Like, it just changes the pace. I'll be here, I can get something going, play with the family, we're hanging out in the backyard, we're talking, we're mucking around, we're doing things just while the food's going. We'll stop, and basically the process, it's like this, it's a ritual, it's a process of, okay, that bit's ready, so we might start off in the morning, and I'll do some shucker eggs in the, shucker eggs in the wood fire oven, and then while I'm getting the grill going, and I've mowed the lawn, and I've used the sticks to get the fire going. It's just this process of slowing things down and bringing those communal roots back to the family, and being able to say, we've been out there, we've harvested this game, this protein, I've processed it, brought it back, and now we're cooking and sharing it with our family and friends. And I've had, my family who at first it was a bit of a mindset shift. I don't know if I want to eat venison, or I don't know if I want to, eat rabbit. And then they do, and even the change in awareness in my children, and they've never been overly fussily eaters, thankfully, because I'd like to think we raised them pretty well from a young age and got them into all the good stuff. They haven't been too picky, but when they're smashing venison tenderloin schnitzels like they're going out of, like, I can't cook them fast enough. Like, literally, I can't keep up with the fry pan. That's special. It's really special, and that's been a something I've been, I guess, really grateful for over the last year, is that, or nearly 2 years, as that journey's, as I've gone back into that journey of harvesting my own protein and serving it on the table. So, it's been really phenomenal.
All right, well, let's get back into that journey, because you said you did hunt and then got out of it with a young family. I sort of appreciate that, because I've got 2.5-year-old twins and a 4.5-year-old, so I don't get to go out anywhere near as much as I'd like, but we do a bit more fishing and camping now, which is great. Yeah. And I can't wait till the day they're a bit older, that they get the hunting part and they're a bit quieter and the like. But for the moment, love taking them away camping and fishing, and they were getting their first fish this Christmas. So it was fantastic. Had an absolute blast. Get into the story. Tell us how you went sort of out of it and then back into it, and then it's become such a big thing. That'd be cool to know.
Yeah. So, really, I guess, not a long story, but I had a really good friend back in my early teens, late teens, I should say, early 20s, who had been hunting ever since he was a kid. So, Croatian family, had access to property out at Hill End, but I guess back then, the way we hunted then, it was like, yep, you killed a small goat, you got a kid, no worries, you chuck it on the spit, you have that, you can eat that. That was cool. But a lot of it was culling, and it was back in the day where you were just being brought onto properties just to minimise the feral game. So we weren't really cutting a lot of it up. A lot of it was going to waste, and there was a bit, I guess philosophically, obviously, culling does have a place and there's a need for it, but I enjoyed the process, and, when you're young and you're having a bit of fun and you're having beers and you're shooting cans and all that sort of stuff, fine. But I guess having steered away from it, lives go different directions, and those friendships kind of went different ways. And for me, it was a really conscious one, as I realised where I was heading. And even, I think the bit that's probably more important now is that philosophy behind why we hunt, and even the education piece with my wife. Owning firearms was a relatively contentious one, because she'd never grown up with any of that stuff, and a fair few of our friends and people we surround ourselves with are not in that ilk. Like, we live on the beach, on the coast, and do a lot of fishing. Like, love fishing, and love going bush and love going to the forest and doing all that sort of stuff. But the hunting piece was probably a little bit foreign to most in my circles, and in particular, and I think more importantly, as a father of kids, so I've got twin girls as well, who are now 10, and I've got a son who's 8, and my wife's vision of what firearm ownership and hunting involved, both from the gun ownership piece as well as the physical hunting, were probably two things that were outside of a comfort zone. And I think it took some fairly robust and healthy conversations to educate and explain and show the process and get some exposure. It was, probably took close to a year before I sort of got the official sign off to go, okay, well, if you're going to do that, like, I respect that. And I think that's something, I've got an incredible wife who's always been supportive of the things that I do. But, this one took a little bit more convincing, and rightly so. And so it wasn't actually a decision I made lightly. And it was one of education, and there was actually sort of a couple of points that influenced me, and probably we'll get a little bit deep and philosophical. Obviously, the harvesting of feral game. So being able to put and I get it's a fairly small dent in feral species, but being able to have a small way of contributing to the use of that protein in a healthy way, I thought was really valuable, really important. It made a lot of sense from a protein consumption standpoint. Even the fact that it's just fantastic protein, it's healthy protein, versus overly fatty meats and so forth that we do tend to consume in the lambs and the beef and the pork. The second was actually as a role model, and this was the bit, as a father, I felt that. We know what it's like with kids, and your kids are still young. They're still in those really formative years, whereas you see how quickly school and technology and life gets a hold of them. And as a parent, it's a tough thing to watch. I'll be 43 this year, and I had a very different upbringing. We didn't have I didn't have a computer till I was 18. We literally were bored most of the time. We didn't have a lot. We grew up in Western Sydney, and there wasn't a lot happening there other than violence and crime and all the things that come with being in sort of a low socioeconomic suburb as you grow up. But what I realised for these kids is, because thankfully they're fortunate enough to have most things, if you don't get them out, if you don't expose them to the sports and the activities and the lifestyle, I feel they're missing out. And it's amazing how many kids are ignorant of, where food comes from, something as simple as that. And so as a father, I thought, well, I need to set an example, and I want my kids to be exposed to the world and in every form for what it is. And so from a very young age, the girls we take them out bush, we take them to farms, we take them on trips. So, one of the things with Smokin Gauchos has been really lucky is, I've made a lot of friends, and being able to take them out and show them, properties where regenerative farms and new areas and places where we go, and we've done cooks, and they get to be exposed to that, and they're not sitting there on an iPad. They're actually running around. They're building fires, they're walking through the bush, they're getting their hands dirty, they're scraping their knees, they're climbing, they're making rope swings, they're doing all that stuff. And now as they grow and school continues to take a hold, they get to have these experiences where when we take them out and they see it and they see what I'm harvesting and they see the photos and they see the videos and I'm telling them the stories and we're sitting at the table, I just feel like it's having such a primal and an important influence on their lives that they would have potentially missed out on. And I think understanding that for them is actually really important. And that's aside from all the other benefits of just getting out and about and running around and not being on devices all day. So I'm sure they get their screen time and we manage all of that, but just that I found, I took my son bush last year, and he came out with Dylan and I, and he got to watch and he got to experience the the harvesting and seeing him even pull a rabbit apart and skin a rabbit himself was such a fantastic. You could see that connection for him, like it really clicked, like it was, and he was a different kid. He was like we're climbing mountains, we're doing some pretty serious terrain. You do 25,000+ steps in a day, and he's keeping up as a child, but just loving every minute of it, and just you see him there. There's no distraction for him. He was in his absolute element. And that to me was a turning point. And when you see, behaviourally how they come away from these experiences, whether we've been camping or we've been bush or whatever it might be, and the kids come back to, reality, and they're much more balanced and they seem to be, so much. I guess they seem to be so much better balanced and I guess better adjusted, knowing that they get those outlets, but then there's still the the normalities of the world that they're in, and it certainly provides for healthy conversation amongst their peer groups as well, who find a lot of what they get to experience foreign, right? Because most of them don't get to do that sort of stuff. Most of them, weren't going bush and being involved in doing an asado cook up and on a property in their school holidays. Most of them were usually going to the beach or to the snow or whatever it might be. So so I think that was the second, and then third, I think it was for me, I guess, having now built a brand is the responsibility I feel of being able to show others the way and educate others. And I think that's that education piece. If each of us can do a little bit to help show someone else that there are alternatives out there are benefits, this is what it means, and be able to have healthy conversations around that, because it is still fairly contentious. Firearms are contentious. Harvesting animals is contentious. To some, and it is what I've found is, interestingly, very little hate, very little online trolling. Like thankfully haven't received too many people that have, gone, how dare you show content like that? I've actually had, close people that go, oh, Kev, I can't watch some of your videos, but I love when I see the food. I give me the food, and I can't watch it. I can't watch you, skin a deer or a goat, but gosh, the food looks amazing, and I love, that's really special, to be able to know that somebody can say, I don't quite agree with that, or I personally wouldn't want to own guns, or I personally couldn't hunt or kill something, take an animal's life and harvest it myself, but I really appreciate what you're doing, and I appreciate the outcome of that, the food that you're sharing, and trying not to waste as much as possible, and just those small bits of being conscious about what we're doing. That's pretty cool. That's really cool to see people being open-minded, or as open-minded as possible, even though it's something that they don't necessarily believe in or agree with.
Yeah, I'm completely with everything you just said. I'm a PE teacher, and so I work with kids all the time, and there is a massive disconnection, not just with young people, but with adults, and that they don't understand where the food comes from. They don't want to be part of the process, and I feel it's sad a little bit, because I feel that we have lost our way as a civilization. That something so natural and normal has now been just skewiffed. It's gone away from that, and it's now the majority of people have zero sort of experience with any of that. And I still look back, unfortunately, my parents weren't hunters. They were massive fishermen, so I'm very lucky in the sense that you give me a fish, I know exactly what to do. I can clean gut, with my eyes shut. It's all good. So the journey of the hunting was on my own and very different. But I sort of look at that and go, I want my kids having that skill set. I want them knowing that, hey, when you take a life, it is a big thing, and we should honour that animal by using it well and creating these wonderful dishes that nourish us. That to me is an absolute win, as opposed to take him down to the local supermarket and grabbing some meat. Now, I'm not saying that we should boycott farmers and butchers and all that. Most definitely not. What I am saying is that if you have the opportunity to do both, then do both. Like, it's a win-win for everybody. I love a steak, and I love my pork. I love, like when you were talking about suckling pig before, I was sitting there going, oh my God, I have not had one of those in a damn long time, and I definitely need to get one. But like, I have no issue in going and buying these things, but I also want to be supplementing that protein source, like you were saying. So completely understand where you're going and getting there. And I think you made a comment there talking about how your friends don't want to see the animal part, the skinning and the gutting and all that, but they love to see the food. And for me, that's the big one. I consistently talk to everybody and say, don't just put up a hunting or a trophy photo, put the meals that accompany it, because that is where the people that are sitting on the fence or at a 50-50, whether they oppose hunting or they're okay with hunting, that's how we get them on the side, because everybody loves good food. Everybody loves to eat. Everybody loves good food. If they're seeing that side of it, so it's not just the Yahoo out there destroying animals and, they're saying, oh, look at this bloodthirsty person.
Yeah.
It's done with a purpose. Now, yes, there's plenty of culling that has to occur where the meat isn't utilised. Get it? I'm a realist. I'm not going to sit here and say that we're going to use every single animal that gets shot. Not going to happen. But the more we can, the better. That's not a bad thing. And the more we spread that message and we show that, and I'm a big fan of what John does. I think it's Bush River Kitchen off the top of my head. I think he runs.
That's right. Yeah, Bush River Kitchen, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. I've followed him for a long time. I love his work. They're key. Like, so what he's doing, I think Ross O'Meara's another one, yourself. Yeah. Man, like it's great to see that, and I'd love to see a hell of a lot more of it coming through. These different flavors, different recipes for people to try, because I see it the other day. Someone put on a Facebook group, I think it was in the States actually, but they asked, I think it was a Traeger page, and they said, can I do venison? And I just jumped on there and I shot a photo of the last venison shoulder that I did in the pellet smoker that was so succulent and moist. Ugh. And you can definitely do it. People that say, oh, it dries out, well, you're not either spending enough time with it, or if you haven't got the time, put in a nice liquid, cover it up so it doesn't go anywhere, and it's gold. So it's just about getting that out there, because so many people have that, oh, it's gamey or it dries out, I don't know how to cook it, whatever it might be. But that's the wonderful thing about social media, about YouTube. If you don't know something, you can just jump on, find something, learn from it. It's just it is a brilliant time to live, in the fact we've got everything on our mobile phones. However, it's a horrible time to live that we've gone so far away from what we once were as well. And I try to get in that middle. I try to do my best to be active in social media, because I think you need to be, and know what's going on in the world and whatnot, but also have that disconnection where I can get out into the bush and I can go hunting and I can go fishing and I can go camping, and it's not impacting me. And that's one where I see a lot of people that they really can't disconnect anymore. Like, if they go camping, they're wanting to pick somewhere with cell phone reception, and instead of sitting around looking at a fire, having a beer and a chat, they're on their phones. I try and do the complete opposite. I generally try and pick campgrounds that don't have cell phone reception. They're getting harder and harder to find, mind you. I think Telstra is doing far too good a job
everywhere.
It's killer. I went down the South Coast and for a Christmas break, and I couldn't believe in the space of 3 years how much cell phone reception was right throughout some of the smaller parts. I could not believe it, and I was just like, it was insane. And that was, it was a bit disappointing, but look, what do you want? I would have loved your fire table. I got this cracking big octopus, and it would have gone amazing over that. Look, it's still, my wife did a bloody good job, and it came out amazing on the cast iron skillet, but having that, just the flame kissing it, would have been unreal. That would have been so good.
Oh, that's also, being on the beach, that's one of the benefits. Like I'm very fortunate. My father-in-law lives with us, and so Poppy takes my son fishing. They'll go fishing a couple of times a week, and either it's down the beach, just going for brim off the rocks, or they go out on the boat. This is crab season, blue swimmer season, so we're usually bringing home a bunch of blue swimmers every week, and so we're pretty spoiled. And then you get the odd octopus that'll come through, and it's just honestly, like, just if you treat it right and I love brining my octopus, but just a very simple brine straight over the coals. There is nothing better. This is wedge of lemon, and you are done. Salt and pepper. It's just phenomenal. And so love octopus. We've been getting a bit of squid lately as well, which has been great. But we are pretty spoiled here where we are in Australia, being able to walk down the road, get a feed, come back, and just 10 minutes up the road, get a harvest of blue swimmer crabs, and there's your dinner tonight. It's pretty good.
Well, I was chatting to a mate. He went over his house on the weekend, and he used to be a food blogger, so he used to go to all the restaurants and write up, and so knows his food really well. And I was talking to him about the octopus, and I said, mate, we got it that tender, and I showed him a video there. I've just got the fork, and the fork just slides straight through it, and I was like, man, it was good. I've sort of convincing the wife to let me get out and spearfish a little bit more, but she's like, oh, you've got responsibilities. But in saying that, I just saw this new product. It's a shark wetsuit that stops. Yeah, it's like they've got like a polymer fiber that stops sharks biting through it. So the actual like tearing and ripping that you get from most shark victims would have, this is going to potentially stop it. And they were showing it looks damn good. So I'm going to investigate that a little bit more and look at it. Might even try and get them on the podcast, because I was sitting there going, that's something like, I don't know, as you get older, I'm 41.
Yeah.
And I want to be around for my kids in the best capacity that I can be in. And whilst I did a lot of spearfishing and a lot of diving when I was younger and had some interactions with sharks and whatnot, I sort of sit there now and go, oh, is it worth, potentially not being there? So it's sort of that hit and miss. I sort of sit there and go, oh, I still think I'll go around the rocks and do a fair bit of that. But like we used to do a lot of deep sea sort of spearing, and I'm not probably too much of a fan of that anymore. But something like this, I was like, oh, maybe I have to keep my eye on this and have a little bit of a look. I think they're looking for people to invest in the product at the moment too. So anyone out there with some spare coin, I reckon it is a dead set winner for just those people, especially Spiros, who most Spiros have had a lot of run-ins with sharks. It's something just as a peace of mind thing. There's probably better than the old shark shield that people run. So, but mate, let's talk about your leather and your knives, because they look amazing. You've got the apron, you've got knife rolls, you've got some really cool looking things there. Overseas, you mentioned a bit earlier that you said they come from Argentina and Brazil.
Yeah, so it took me a few years, a lot of trial and error, been ripped off quite a few times. Unfortunately, it's just all the risks of, doing business overseas, and so, which is also cool because you learn a lot as well, which I was really grateful for. But yeah, I guess what I looked at was, what's the me as a fire cook. What is the product ecosystem? What do I need? What do I use? What's important to me? What am I experiencing on a daily basis? Because I live and breathe this. I do this so frequently, and I've done it for so long that it was a really good opportunity to start just being really intentional about what I used. And again, that philosophy about buying once is, as I've sort of grown older and, you start to get a bit more disposable income, you become a bit more financially secure, those things that sort of happen as you grow up, you start to, I guess I started to be a lot more conscious about my consumption choice, about the things that I buy. And so I will always try and buy something, I'll try and buy the best that I can or can afford at any given time, because I want it to last. And I this throwaway society that we've sort of evolved into, this kind, this Chinesium sort of China syndrome, where it's like, yep, you just buy it cheap, and then you can buy it again if you have to. And the consequence that has obviously on the environment, sustainability, just didn't quite sit well with me. Plus, I also loved, having grown up with a craftsman as a father. My dad's a shop fitter and joiner, and he was a master carpenter. So used to do a lot of solid timber work and build a lot of beautiful furniture and all that sort of stuff. I'm an engineer by trade, so I started off as a tool maker in metal, and I just loved seeing things being made by hand or being manufactured. And so I thought, well, it just made a lot of sense to start designing the stuff that I would use, and that's where the product ecosystem came from. And so it started off, really small. I started off with a couple of knives. They were okay. My first few knives, sort of I was showing somebody the other day the iteration of some of the knives when we first started, and I've really sort of leveled that out. And what I find now, I'm in this really good, we spent a lot of time thinking, like being intentional about the blades and taking influence from not just Latin America, obviously, even though we hand make most of our knives in Brazil, for example. What we've been able to do, and that's what I love about the brand, it's become a bit of a fusion. So as opposed to it being this traditional Latin American brand, what I've done is I've taken that culture, the influence of Latin America and smoking gauchos and the gaucho culture. So just so you know, the gauchos, one of the things the gauchos were known for is them carrying this knife, like a field knife. And it was a blade that basically went on their belt, that literally just slotted into their belt. and it was effectively quite a sort of a 8-inch blade, a 7 to 8-inch blade, depending. There's a few different styles, but they all carried all the cowboys carried this one knife, and they would use it for everything from slaughtering something to cutting something up to harvesting, foraging, whatever they needed it for. Is it like a universal knife? And then what I found was, obviously being right into the cooking piece, was having the right chef set, having the right knives, using the right tools for the right jobs. So I started designing, iterating pieces, and then working with our artisans to just to create some incredible knives. And I guess the other thing too was I wanted to be able to create something that was handmade at a price point that most people could afford, or that the average person could afford. I think I did try working or speaking with knife makers in Australia. I originally wanted to get knives made in Australia, but I got some really good advice from some of the biggest knife makers, like handmade knife makers in Australia, who said, look, for it to be at a price point, that the average person can afford, it's just not feasible. And what we might sell a set for, you might buy one or maybe two handmade Australian knives for that. And I think there's a lot of great Aussie knife makers that are phenomenal from a scaling perspective, or from an accessibility perspective, to be able to make in the right quantities, to be able to service customers around Australia. The model didn't quite work, so that's where I ended up going to Brazil and Argentina. And what I found was, over the years in refining the products, and they've just continued to get better and better, the feedback we get from, just the quality of steel we use, the finish on them, the timbers, so using, Brazilian hardwoods that are all ethically sourced, so they're all kiln dried, they're all harvested to FSC approvals, and they've got the journey that the timber and the steel goes on to become the knife, to become the tool. One of the very first implements that Homo sapiens used, which was the stone turned into the knife, turned into a blade. It's just phenomenal, and it's just for me, that's the connection that I like, is taking a bit of steel, a bit of wood, and seeing my design come to life by an artisan over in Brazil who barely speaks English, and we have this quite a large cultural barrier, but there is this mutual respect for the relationship we've built over the years in trying new designs, bringing out new products, listening to the market. So we recently released a really sexy filleting bony knife, with an arch blade, and who inspired that was actually Dylan. And I sent Dylan one to say thanks, and the first thing he did was did a video with it, and he said, Kev, this is just such a pleasure to use. Like, it's nimble enough, it's got just enough flex in the blade, it's just so good on the hands. And Dylan, like me, is like an absolute knife whore. Like, we just love our knives, as I think most people in our industry do. We one knife's never enough. We love all sorts of knives, and even I found, as somebody who has been fairly competent with knives, one of the things that's been really cool, and another one of my mentors who's been really helpful in sort of guiding the hunting process is Alex Herring, the Wild Food Meister. And I don't know if you follow Alex, but he was really lovely bloke, and he actually does a knife sharpening course where he shows you how to use the stone method, using diamond stones. And I took a couple of my mates with me to go and do that, because like my sharpening, I'd always sort of done through using a steel, or I'd send my knives away to get sharpened professionally. So always knew the basics of sharpening, but never knew how to get that sort of, that hair popping razor sharp finish on my blades. And, did a night with him and just came away with like, wow, that's so cool. And like, getting my knives to that razor sharp finish it's just something really special about that, and which is really cool. But so that's where most of the knives. So we're actually working on something pretty special at the moment, which I'll hopefully see in the next sort of 3 months or so. But the knives are obviously a big part, and then the leather. Been really conscious about the type of leather as well. So in particular with the aprons, we use a bovine leather for the aprons, and I went through a few before I got the one that we now sell the most of, and that we basically only sell a black and brown version of this same apron. And what I love about it is when you're a fire cook and you're standing up for most of the day and you're in front of a hot grill or an open fire, being able to protect your chest from that heat, because when you are over, like literally physically in front of a fire and you're tending to an open, especially like an ironbark fire, so 90% of my cooks are on ironbark, and everyone who's cooked with ironbark knows how hot and how hot it burns, and that heat, shielding yourself from that heat does become quite important. But what I found in some of the earlier designs, my aprons, the leather that I was using was a bit too thick, a little bit too rigid, didn't have the sort of the dexterity in it. And now the aprons we make they're just really supple bovine leather, and so I find they're light enough so they're not weighing on you too much through the day. Like when you're wearing the aprons, it's a bit of a weight on your shoulders. You don't get that with these aprons, but still provides the protection and is pliable enough because it's so supple. So it doesn't feel too rigid. It actually becomes really comfortable to cook with. So if you're bending over, picking things up, moving around, especially on an open fire pit, I just found these aprons, they've been designed with an intention, but it's more the material choice and specifications and finishings. There's a lot of thought that goes into the creation of that, and I think that's one of the things that a lot of our customers have really appreciated is they can tell that a lot of what we do is intentional. You're not just finding something off the shelf, putting a logo on it and then flogging it. There's a process that goes into getting it right. Same with our knife rolls. We have a mix of single piece, for the most part, single piece backs, and then stitched fronts. We've also got stitched flaps. So things, I think about, well, depending on the knives, depending on how they're going to be used, depending on how many pockets they are, being able to think through what does that layout look like? It's all really, to be honest, it's quite selfish because I do it for me. I design and create the products that the things that I want and that I like, and so it's like, well, if I'm happy with it, I'm sure other people would be happy with it, and it just it just so happens that the Australian market has responded to it really, really well, and I've been extremely grateful for the amount of feedback and the amount of people that are happy to share it and show others and buy it as gifts. That to me is the ultimate test, is somebody going, well, this is something special and I'd love to gift that to someone. So that's it's pretty cool to think that something that started off 4 or 5 years ago as this sort of little cottage business. So it was a bit of a passion project, has turned into something a little bit more realistic. And for me, what this business actually means is it's the bit that allows me to live the lifestyle. If that's what it is for me. It's being able to take my kids on experiences. When I've customers that want me to come out and quote a custom outdoor kitchen or look at a custom grill, or they want us to visit their farm and do a collab or something like that, the conditions are my family comes with me. And so that's a really cool way. It's been a tangible way of my kids seeing me express creativity, which is something that I probably throttled for a lot of my life, sort of, growing up how I did. Creativity wasn't always, overly well received. It was kind of like you work, you make money, you pay your bills and go to bed, It's that kind of put food on the table. Like that was the philosophy growing up. But now I've found that, the kids watch you, they pay attention, they see, you're drawing that on there, and then all of a sudden it's showing up on your doorstep in a box. And then, I'm taking them out to our fulfillment centre, and, we use a fulfillment centre that employs people with disabilities. And that's been really cool as well, because the kids can see that, hey, there are people here with disabilities that are working on picking and packing, and for them, that's giving them a social, giving them a social life. It's giving them some meaning and some purpose in their life, and is helping the community there, because they're obviously employing people with various disabilities, and for them to be able to see that process, that end to end, and then obviously they see the content and they see the relationships. just again goes back to that role model bit. So they see the products, they see the designs, they see creativity, they see working with people, they see the social aspects, they see the trips we get to go on, and that's really what this business has meant to us. So whilst it might look like some grills and some leather goods to the average Joe, there's a lot of meaning behind why I do this, and on top of my day job.
Mate, I absolutely love it, and I think you mentioned Alex before. I know he's one of many that are doing some cleanups in state forests. You can jump on to Clean Up Australia Day, and there's all different ones in different localities, which I think is an absolutely great thing for hunters to get involved in. Mate, I'm really glad you did find this and just making things that you're happy with for everybody else. I definitely love your content, and hopefully one day I'll have one of those fire pits running outside my place. But, mate, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for coming on the show, and I'm sure we'll talk again in the future.
Absolutely, Matt. Thank you so much, and real honoured to be part of the Australian Hunting and Beyond podcast. Really appreciate you reaching out and having this chat with me. It means a lot. I do appreciate it.
All right, guys, I hope you've enjoyed it. I know I have. Please go and check out Kevin's stuff at Smokin, Gauchos. Mate, keep doing what you're doing. Can't wait to continue following your journey.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it, mate.
All right, listeners. Bye for now. You've been listening to the Australian Hunting and Beyond podcast with Matt. Thanks for tuning in, and can't wait to catch you next time. But in the meantime, if you want more, you can find it at linktr.ee/Australian Hunting and Beyond. That will give you our YouTube, Instagram, X, Facebook, you name it. We'll catch you next time.